Now, it's always an exciting time when Mizuno launches new irons, especially within that JPX franchise where they have models to suit every type of player. But for 2023, there's a brand new model that Mizuno say will help golfers with slower swing speeds hit it further. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's really addressing the need for game improvement irons to provide a more playable and optimum ball flight. The trend I've seen with lofts getting stronger, even at my swing speed, I struggle to really flight the ball in these game improvement, super game improvement clubs. And Mizuno say they've combated that with the launch of this new JPX range, specifically the JPX923 Hot Metal High Launch. As you can see, I've got the 3 Hot Metal irons here in front of me. It's a split launch this time, so you're gonna have to wait until February next year for the Tour and the Forge, which are the 2 models that admittedly would probably be more suited to my swing speed and my handicap. But I wanted to put these irons through their paces, the Hot Metal Pro and the Hot Metal High Launch in this JPX923 range to see exactly what they're all about. But even more specifically, if I swing them slower, can I get even more distance out of that Hot Metal High Launch than I can the other 2 models? That's what we're here at Longcliffe Golf Club to find out. Now, if you want to find out about the technology in each of these specific heads, go to the Golf Monthly website. There's a story there, you can read all about that. We're not going to cover that in this video, but what we are going to talk about is the concept behind the changes that Mizuno have made with these irons versus the previous 921 range in that JPX franchise. So Mizuno, as we know, they have that shaft optimizer technology where in 3 swings they can identify what shaft a golfer needs for their irons. And from all those different swings they've captured, over 350,000 swings, there were a couple of trends that really stood out, and that's really helped shape and influence the design of these new irons. The first is the fact actually that golfers' swing speeds are quite slow. Average was about 82 miles an hour with the 7 iron, and that has led to the introduction of this high launch model, which we've covered already. But the second trend was that golfers tended to present quite a lot of shaft lean at impact, and that's resulted in a change in the bounce and the camber to these clubs. So you'll notice there's a lot more bounce and camber to these clubs to give you a little bit more forgiveness through the turf if you do tend to de-loft the club into impact and get that leading edge quite sharp into the ball. So it gives you a little bit more margin for error, Mizuno say, on your strike. So those are the 2 key trends that Mizuno have incorporated into this range. I'm going to hit some shots here into this beautiful par 4 down here, the 10th hole at Longcliffe Golf Club. Got the launch monitor, the full swing kit launch monitor, going to capture some data. We're going to assess the ball flight, assess the feel, the sound, everything about these clubs, and then we'll feedback afterwards. So without further ado, let's hit some shots, see what they're all about. Oh, it's much higher. Well, so I've really enjoyed my testing session on the full swing kit launch monitor with the 3 new JPX923 Hot Metal irons, and I've also thrown in the JPX921 Hot Metal iron as a comparison, which we're going to touch on now. So I'll flash up the data on the screen. You can click pause and peruse it at your leisure. But there were some trends that I noticed during the testing from the data that we got. The first being that I love how the spin is pretty high for what is a game improvement iron range, where we see lofts getting stronger, spin coming down. The fact that these clubs are spinning close to 6,000 RPM, we saw it with the prior generation, and that's been continued into this one. So that's going to help players keep the ball in the air for longer and get more stopping power into greens. So that's the first thing that I really observed across all 3 of the new irons. So coming on to numbers, worth pointing out that the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro in this 923 range is half a degree stronger than where we were in the 921. But looking at the numbers, actually, it wasn't necessarily getting anything more out of this new version. Both were carrying similar, in the Hot Metal, starting with the Hot Metal iron, both were carrying around about that 170 range. But what I did notice was the ball flight was a little bit higher. So even though it's stronger in loft, actually the ball was launching a little bit higher and it was flying a little bit higher too. Notice that testing here on this hole at Longcliffe Golf Club. It was like 1 or 2 yards higher through the air, which is a change that I like to see given those stronger lofts. And then we move on to that, the Hot Metal Pros. Actually, this is the club I got the most out of, despite it being a slimmed down version of the Hot Metal. Actually hit a little bit further than the Hot Metal. Definitely prefer the look of it. It's got a more compact look down at address, whereas the Hot Metal iron in the 921 and 923, very similar, really comforting sparring, a little bit of offset there, thicker top line. Hot Metal Pro a little bit more slimmed down, so it definitely suits my eye as a lower handicapper a little bit more. And then we move on to the Hot Metal High Launch. Now you might think, well, This club is weaker in loft. It's 2 to 3 degrees weaker through the set than the Hot Metal. In the 7-iron it's 31 degrees, so it's significantly weaker. And as a result, the testing I did on Launch Monitor and my speed would suggest that it's not going to give me the distance compared to the other two models. So it's around about 7 or 8 yards shorter on average than the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro. But we know this club is not designed for a golfer like me. It's designed for slower swing speeds. And so now we're going to do a little experiment where I'm going to test this Hot Metal high launch up against the Hot Metal, slow my swing speed down to 75 miles an hour and see actually by doing that and switching into this new iron, do you get more distance? Because I think if you do, that's going to suit an awful lot of players looking for a club like this. Okay, so I'm going to start with the JPX923 Hot Metal. Going to hit 3 shots with each at that slower swing speed and see which one gives us the most distance. Okay, it's a good hit. Swing speed 79. They only carried 115 yards. Oh, slightly slower that one. 66. That's a good shot. 70.5. 121. Okay, let's move on to the Hot Metal. So we're looking like we're averaging around about 120 yards with the Hot Metal. Now we're going to try the high launch. Well, I might have been a little heavy. Swing speed's bang on, 75, 112 carry. I think I hit that a little bit chunky. That's a much cleaner strike. Higher flight, much noticeably higher flight on that one. So that's really interesting. Swing speed of 71, or 70.6, carry of 125. So that's the longest shot I've hit in this experiment so far, and not the fastest swing speed by any means. Again, noticeably higher flight, a good 4 or 5 yards higher, 71 swing speed, carry of 129 yards. So this little experiment has proved to me definitely that I think slower swing speed golfers, mid-high handicap golfers who struggle to get the ball in the air are really going to enjoy what this Hot Metal high launch has to offer, and they're actually going to get a bit more distance out of this because your ball flight is optimized for your swing speed. So while these 3 JPX923 Hot Metal irons are probably not aimed at me, I've really enjoyed my time testing these, and there's 3 really key takeaways that I would offer to you in terms of how these irons perform and the user experience that you will expect. The first being these irons look absolutely fantastic. I don't think they move it on a great deal in terms of looks or performance versus where we were with the JPX921. In fact, I think like for like models, you're not going to see huge gains. You might see a little bit more distance from that stronger loft and a slightly maybe higher ball flight as well from the technology they've packed into this club, but you're not going to see huge gains, I don't think, versus generation to generation. But the other thing that really stood out for me was the turf interaction. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly how it felt differently, but it definitely felt different. I think a little bit more give through the turf, so maybe you're not getting I felt like my divots were a little bit shallower, a little bit smaller, and I think your margin for error is a little bit greater if you just catch the ground slightly heavy. So that's the other thing I would kind of observe from generation to generation. I think the feel is absolutely fantastic. These clubs feel hot, but they don't feel harsh or clicky. They actually feel relatively soft but explosive at the same time. It's an interesting combination, but through the set it's a very pleasing feel. And I think across all 3 of these Hot Metal clubs, if you're a mid to high handicapper, there's definitely going to be something for you. Even if you're maybe a high single figure golfer, I think you'll really enjoy what this Hot Metal Pro has to offer in terms of that visual package. Nice and compact down behind the ball, but gives really good speed, good launch and good distance as well. So lots to like about this new JPX923 range. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you do, click the like button down below and do comment on this video. We'd love to hear from you. Which iron are you most excited to try within this new Hot Metal franchise? If you're after those better player irons, you've got to wait till February, but I think this Hot Metal irons from what we've seen so far, there's a lot to be excited about with this new JPX923 range. But that's all from me. From Longcliffe Golf Club, I'll see you next time.